Hey everyone, Tin Man here, and today I'm going to talk about 5 new builds that I've been playing and having success with in the Dota Underlords meta after the big update. Now, of course, the big update changed a lot of things about the game, including introducing the Underlords, changing a bunch of units, adding new alliances, so the meta is still sorting itself out. This is not going to be a definitive top 5 list or tier list or anything like that. It's just 5 builds that I've been enjoying, and hopefully you can find some success with them as well. First off, we've got Insect Hunters. Now, Insect Hunters are really enabled by 2 things, the Insect Alliance, which was recently added to the game, as well as the change of Medusa from being the Ace of Scaled to now the Ace of Hunters. Generally, you're going to want these 4 units, Weaver, who's the Insect Hunter that pulls it all together, Drow Ranger, who provides the valuable Heartless Alliance, as well as Mirana and Medusa, who are just 2 of the strongest standalone hunters, as kind of your core of this build. But of course, that's not the entire build. There's a lot of optional units here. You have 5 other options for hunters to complete the 6 hunter synergy. You've got 3 options for insects to complete the Insect Alliance, which this gives you a lot of flexibility and insulation against a unit getting jailed on a particular day. This build will still be viable even if one of the hunters is jailed, one of the insects is jailed, you can still pull it all together. If your opponents are playing a lot of magic damage compositions like mages, you might want to throw in Tidehunter to grab Scaled along with Medusa, or possibly Slarder if you haven't found a Medusa yet. Bristleback is not really a hunter or insect or really does anything that you'd think would fit into this comp, but he actually fits quite well with Brawny if you have Beastmaster and Savage if you have Lycan. He can provide really substantial damage output, especially along with the Heartless bonus, because his ability deals physical damage. And of course the Heartless bonus is very critical to all hunter builds since they rely so much on that physical damage. So Pudge, or if he's jailed, Abaddon are good options for a tanky frontliner to keep your hunters safe while they dish out that damage. In terms of the Underlord choice, you've got 2 choices. You've got Hobgin and an Essex, and really both of them are viable, but I think I prefer Hobgin. He's got the talent Hot Rod, which increases his attack speed, and that's really valuable in this hunter composition because you're already shredding the opponent's armor with the Heartless bonus, and he just provides a lot of damage with his own auto attacks, but also by the supercharge to give your other hunters more attack speed. An Essex can also be viable. She's got the talent End of Medicine, which you trade out your healing for a lot of increased attack damage. This kind of makes you a sort of glass cannon build, which I'm a little hesitant to always try, but it certainly can be viable. In terms of positioning, you have a pretty simple stacked in a corner formation. You want to be stacked around your Drow Ranger to maximize her aura, and you generally want to keep Hobgin a little bit well protected, maybe off the front lines just so that he doesn't die right off the bat. Do be aware of opposing Pudges though, since he's a very popular unit. If you have an opposing Pudge that you're going up against, you might want to put Mirana in the corner rather than Sniper because she can leap away after getting hooked. Next up, we've got Warriors and Savages. This is kind of a callback to the old Warrior and Warlocks good stuff kind of build of the previous meta. You've got the CC Warriors, Tidehunter, Kunkka, Tiny, and then of course the good damage output in Troll Warlord, Bristleback, and Arc Warden. And these kind of form a great synergy where you've got a tanky front line just disrupting the enemy while also dishing out strong, consistent damage from multiple sources. So even if one of them gets shut down, maybe assassinated, maybe doomed, maybe, whatever it might be the case, you still have other sources of damage output. Of course, this build is still very flexible as well. You've got options like Slarder to get scaled if opponents are running a lot of mages. You've got a lot of options for Warlocks if you want some extra healing. Witch Doctor is a Warlock and provides the Troll bonus with the Troll Warlord. And of course, as part of the namesake, you've got Savages. So the Savages, they seem like they've gotten a little bit of a nerf in the big update. Their numbers have gone down a little bit. But in reality, the doubling of health totals means that fights go on a little bit longer. Every unit has more chances to auto attack, and it actually raises the value of Savages just because they have those longer fights to ramp up that passive over and over again. So you actually see a higher priority placed on things like Venomancer, Lone Druid, and Tusk now in this sort of build. And especially they pair well with Bristleback to ramp up his damage over time as well. In terms of Underlord choice, a Essex is generally preferred in this build since her healing is quite effective on warriors. Anytime you have damage reduction from warriors or knights or anything like that, the healing is just that much more effective on them. But Hobgen is also quite viable as well. I don't want to rule him out because of his supercharged ability is particularly effective on savages. And I've seen in a tournament this past weekend, some players were running Venomancer as a savage and were giving him Mask of Madness and then pairing it with Hobgen to just supercharge that ranged savage unit. And he was just going absolutely crazy, stacking up hundreds of bonus attack damage and then dealing 1,000 plus DPS. It was absolutely insane. So Hobgen's definitely viable, although a Nesix might be a bit more consistent overall. And in terms of positioning, you generally want to be very spread out with your CC units up front, the Tidehunter and the Kunkka, to get that initial stuns off on the enemy. The key point to note here is Arc Warden in the bottom left. This is the exact square you generally want to leave Arc Warden on because he will prefer to spawn his copy directly to his left, which means if the opponent is running Pudge, which is once again a very common unit in the meta, the Pudge is going to hook the Arc Warden copy rather than the Arc Warden himself. If you would say put Arc Warden in the opposite corner on the right hand side, then he's still going to spawn the copy to the left, but then Pudge would hook the real Arc Warden and not the clone. Next up, we've got the update on Knights. Now, of course, Knights have gotten a little bit of a change, where Necrophos is no longer a Warlock, and Omni Knight is now a healer along with the Necrophos. So this has kind of shifted the focus away from a Knights and Warlocks composition to a Knights and Healer composition. You have a pretty good replacement for the Witch Doctor in terms of Dazzle, and then Necrophos, you can still play him because he provides the valuable Heartless bonus, as well as his AoE healing is just very, very effective on Knights, for the same reason it's very effective on Warriors. So this is probably the least flexible build that I'm talking about today because really these are the 8 core units, along with a Dragon if you get up to level 9, that you want to be playing in this build. And this makes it very susceptible to potential jail if, say, Abaddon gets in jail, or Omni Knight, or Necrophos, or any of these core units. It becomes very difficult to fully assemble this composition. One note about Sven, the new Ace of Knights, he's actually not very good in this build because he reduces the Knight's damage reduction, and the key synergy here is the damage reduction of Knights plus the healing, making that healing much more effective. So Sven actually kind of goes counter to what you want to be doing in this build. In terms of Underlords, you really want a Nesix in this build. Hobgen does not work nearly as well. Once again, it comes back to the whole fact that you're all about the healing and amplifying that healing, and a Nesix is the only Underlord right now in the game that does healing. This Martyr's Boon ability is so massively impactful. Doesn't seem like much from this text, only 50 health per level, but in reality, it does so much healing over the course of the fight, especially when amplified by the healer bonus. If you're not running an Essex, you probably don't want to be running this exact composition. Maybe you want to try, if you're getting a lot of Knights, you might want to try Knights and Trolls instead, like 4 Troll build. In terms of positioning, the typical Knights formation is kind of a clump around the Necrophos because he's got an AoE healing, so he wants to be roughly in the center of the fight. You've got your melee warriors up front like Abaddon and Chaos Knight. You probably want to have Chaos Knight off to the side so that he gets a little bit less aggro because he's a little bit less tanky than the Abaddon and Omni Knight. And then other than that, you want to be playing around opposing Pudges. That's always a consideration with positioning. So you've got probably your least valuable unit in the Bat Rider in the back corner. Next up, we've got a brand new build, the 6 Primordials. Now, I kind of have to eat some crow here because I've been kind of trash talking on Primordials for so long. Ever since the removal of Summoning Stone from the game, the concept of the Primordial Alliance has just been really bad. They summon these Eidolons that just don't deal very much damage. They don't have very much health. They just seem very unimpressive. But with the big update, we got 2 new Primordials. We got Faceless Void and Io. And those 2 units are quite strong individually, but also we got the update to now the Primordial buff goes up to 6 units. At 2 units and 4 units, Primordials are not very impressive because the Eidolons are very weak, as I said. But once you get up to 6, those Eidolons double in effectiveness. And Enigma is now the ace of Primordials and also gives them that Malice ability, or Malefice. So this build has actually kind of come together, and I've seen some people have some success with it. I haven't played it too terribly much. I don't know all of the ins and outs of it just yet, but I have seen it be successful, and it seems like a ton of fun. Other than those 6 Primordials, you of course have a lot of other options as well. You've got, since you're already running Tiny, you might want to complete the Warrior bonus, along with Slardar, Tidehunter to grab Scaled if there's some mages, or just Kunkka, because he's a good solid stunning warrior. You've got Lone Druid and Bristleback because you have IO, so you might want to complete the Druid Alliance with the Lone Druid, and then Bristleback provides really good damage over time by using that Savage bonus up with Lone Druid. Alternatively, I've also seen some players pair insects with this build. It might seem a little bit odd at first, but you do have 2 assassins in the core build. You've got Morphling and you've got Faceless Void, which makes Nyx Assassin to complete the Assassin bonus pretty logical. And from there, Sand King pairs well with Lone Druid or Bristleback for Savages, and then Broodmother's just a pretty good unit on her own. Weaver, on the other hand, not so great. You might want to try to avoid Weaver if you're playing this insect bonus without the Hunters. And I do want to emphasize how strong the insect bonus is. I know we talked about insects a little bit back in the Hunter section, but the insect bonus is something that you look on paper and say, I don't really know how powerful this is. It doesn't seem all that great, but in reality it does add quite a substantial amount of DPS over time, and it's kind of unstoppable DPS. It's not like a unit that they can CC and kill and then be done with it. These insects are going to constantly swarm and constantly attack the enemy during the entire fight. So it's really strong, consistent damage output. Plus it has some defensive capability because it reduces your opponent's chance to hit with their auto attacks. So really you can kind of think of it as a defensive ability as well. So I'm a big fan of the Insect Alliance. It really can swing fights once you complete it. And last but not least, Razor is probably the odd man out, like the worst Primordial, but sometimes one of the other core 6 Primordials is jailed for that day, so you might have to play Razor in exchange for one of those previous units. And finally, we were going to talk about the Underlord choice. I really don't know if there's a preference between the 2 Underlords right now for this build. Once again, I haven't played it too terribly much, but I've seen both Anesix and Hobgen have success with this build, and I don't think either of their abilities particularly synergizes overly well like with some of the previous builds. And in terms of positioning, once again, we just want our big CC units up front, the Tiny, if you're running Tidehunter, or if you're running somebody like Enigma who just wants to get that cast right away. You're generally going to want to have your Underlord a little bit back and closer to the middle so that they're protected against opposing pudge hooks or just opposing opponents walking straight onto them. Once again, we've got Arc Warden in the same spot as discussed before, and then if you're running IO, you want to have that IO right next to Arc Warden to give the tether bonus and increase the attack speed of that Arc Warden. And then the rest of your units can be placed pretty much wherever you want, kind of spread out. Last build to talk about is everyone's favorite from previous metas, 6 mages. It seems to persist through all kinds of meta shifts. The mages have been adjusted slightly here in the sense that Crystal Maiden no longer grants mana, and instead the mana generation comes from the Human Alliance. So to that end, you really want to have 4 humans always in this build, generally going to be Keeper of Light, Crystal Maiden, Lina, and Dragon Knight, because those are mages, and also Dragon Knight's a very high damage, or magic damage dealing unit. Puck and Lich are just going to be the next 2 best damage dealing mages, so those will kind of complete most of your core. Now, of course, this is only 5 mages, so to complete the mage bonus, you're going to want either Razor or Ogre Magi. Both of them are pretty poor. You don't really want them. They don't deal a lot of damage. They don't, they don't really contribute too much to the build, but you just need one of them to complete the mage bonus. Ogre Magi is a little bit tankier. Razor does a little bit more damage, but more often than not, one of the mages is going to be jailed on any given day, so you have to make do and put whatever 6 you can find in. Of course, if one of the humans is jailed, you might need another human to get up to 4 humans to ensure that constant mana generation. That's where Kunkka comes in. He is a reasonable human. He deals a good amount of magic damage with his ultimate and has a nice stun, as well as just being a solid frontliner. After that, you really just want to fill out your composition with any unit that deals lots of AoE magic damage. Somebody like Morphling, Nature's Prophet, Gyrocopter, Queen of Pain, and Disruptor are all great options. They don't really have synergy with the rest of your build. You just are playing them for their magic damage abilities. Underlord choice, we've got Hobgen is generally going to be the preferred option because he deals magic damage with his Explosivo, as well as that magic damage gets increased by the Implosion talent, making him have a very strong single target nuke. His ultimate, Friendly Fire, drops bombs that also deal magic damage, which is once again amplified by the mage bonus. So Hobgoblin is definitely going to be the preferred choice. A Nesix can be viable if you've picked a Nesix and are starting to get a lot of mages. You might want to pick up the Arcane Ritual talent, giving even more mana to your team, and then maybe if you pick up Arcane Ritual, you might be able to skimp on some of those humans and instead opt for more magic damage dealers because you already have the magic generation or the mana generation from a Nesix. And last, the positioning is once again another standard kind of a stack and a corner composition. You want to have your tankier units that have a faster cast alt like Razor, Morphling, or Dragon Knight closer to the front. And then your units that have kind of these straight line abilities closer to the corner to optimize their targeting like Keeper of the Light and Puck. Once again, you got to be a little bit wary of opposing pudges, and then if there is a pudge, you might want to put somebody like Crystal Maiden or Puck in the corner who are a little bit less valuable to get hooked away right at the start rather than your Keeper of the Light. So once again, I just want to conclude by saying this is not a definitive tier list. It's not a top 5 list. It's really too early for that in the meta, but I just wanted to share 5 of these builds that I've been having success with and I think are good options right now if you want to give them a try. Some of these builds, or some other builds in the meta, such as Brutes and Assassins, are also good. I've tried those, I've had some success with them, but I don't really know if I have found a build that I really like that I want to share right now with everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and if you did enjoy this content, make sure you like and subscribe, and you can also follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/tinman354, where I stream almost every day. And a big thanks to all my Patreon supporters. If you like content like this and want to see more of it, consider supporting me over on patreon.com/tinman354. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.